Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, non-binary, distinguished guests, welcome to Ridiculous, the Life of a Clown. And we are regarding. So let's start with say who you are and what do you do?
Hi, my name is Steve Smith. Currently, I am the creative director at Circus Center here in San Francisco.
So, Steve, thank you so much for being on the show. You have a really broadly varied and layered career that hits on some really interesting points that I don't think most people get to experience. You worked in children's television.
Yes.
You worked for what was his name? Chuck Jones.
Yes, indeed.
And on top of being the director of the Clown College and working off Broadway. And so let's go all the way back to the beginning. What drew you to clown in the first place?
Well, let me open up the books here, Abraham. You know, I wasn't really drawn to clown right away. When I think of the word clown, I was drawn to Laurel and Hardy, Harold Lloyd, eventually Buster Keaton changed my world. But I wanted to be in vaudeville. There was no more vaudeville to be in. So when I came to the point where I had to choose a major in college, I decided to major in theater. This is in 1969, 1970, and I went to Ohio University in Athens. Right up the road from us, about 90 miles, was Kent State. Well, this was during the Vietnam War, and a lot of moratoriums and riots going on. And the Kent State students who were killed by the National Guard, because our idiot governor at the time decided they should have live ammunition, brought about riots on all of the campuses everywhere. But ours was particularly bad because we were right down the road from them. I got hit in the head with a tear gas canister. And I wish I could say I was there championing the cause to get out of Vietnam, but I was on my way to a rehearsal at the theater for Peter Pan. I know it's shameful. But I wound up in the healthcare center, and there, on the magazine rack, was a Life magazine cover story about Ringling Brothers Clown College, and it was one of those crystalline moments where everything is absolutely clear. You know, this is what I have to do. I knew nothing about circus, knew nothing about circus clowning. But when I read the syllabus, basically, that was in this story, I thought, this is where I belong.
So you literally had to get hit over the head to figure out what it was that you were going to do with your life.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. and it was an amazing moment because it was a seismic shift for a lot of reasons. But as we all left Athens, because we had 24 hours to get off campus, 25,000 undergraduates on our two-lane road, as we were leaving, the National Guard is moving in tanks. And I thought, okay, the world is changing, and my world is about to change. And man, did it. For the better, for me.
So how long was that transition from being in college to being in clown college?
So this was the spring of 1970, I think that's when that happened. And they suspended classes. We all went to branch campuses to try to finish our schoolwork. And in the course of reading that article, there was an address I wrote to Mr. Bill Ballantyne, who was the then dean of the Clown College, asking for an application, blah, blah, blah. I got one, I sent it in, and was accepted to the class of 1971. So that is when I went for my grand experiment in clowning, and I've never looked back.
Now, were there any other notables in your class?
Notable to me.
Well, that's what matters.
On the faculty was Lou Jacobs.
Great,
who was
wow.
a 60-year veteran of Ringling. Otto Griebling, who was the man who really inspired me. By the time I met Otto, he had already lost his voice due to cancer, so he mimed everything, all of the time. So you were riveted, you were compelled to look at him. And he had the saddest eyes of any, that's not fair, he had wise eyes. He had seen a lot in his lifetime, and it reflected. And I think that's what made him such a great performance clown. His one-on-one with the audience before the show, during what we called the come-in, we would just stand at the back door and watch him because his ability to reach every single person, even in a Madison Square Garden where there's 10, 15,000 people, that was the biggest lesson to learn from Otto. But so those are the notables on my faculty, and for our students. Yes, one of my classmates was Tim Holst, who went from being a clown to a singing ringmaster to the vice president of talent and production, and traveled all over the world hiring and syncing up new acts for Ringling. And that friendship led to my eventual ability to direct the Ringling show for one season.
Now, jumping way ahead real quick, you were the director of the Ringling Clown College for a time in the 80s.
That's right, yeah.
So, Christina Lewis was on the show last week, and she says that she remembered you from Clown College. She was going to hang around, but we didn't get to time it right.
Oh, doggone it.
But was that in the 80s, or was that back when during your...
Yeah, so it was 10 years. So it was from 85 to 94. I was the dean of the school.
And do you have any interaction with any of the Bay Area clowns who also went to Ringling during that period?
Well, sure. So, I don't know how many of them are still clowning. Brady Lee and Woody LeBounty, who went on to be an author and has a real life with real people in it. I've tried to stay in touch with as many alums as I possibly can. It's amazing to me how many are actually still working in the business. But the Bay Area is really different. I mean, this is different out here.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you all know that, but...
I'm not from here, so I'm well aware.
I've been here, 2 years now, a little over 2 years, and there is this protective bubble around San Francisco, and I say that in a good way, but it has an energy that's unlike any place I've ever been. And it's a little insular, and it's a little... closed shop until people get to know you. And
there's a benefit and a drawback to that both, because we have the safety for people to be openly transgender, for people to pursue progressive politics, for people to push the boundaries of social and sexual identity. At the same time, we are protected from a lot of what is political and social reality to the rest of the country. So yeah, there's a benefit and a drawback there.
Well, what I love about it is that I get to see performance pieces that I would never see, certainly working for Ringling.
Indeed.
And I try to, clowning is, if you consider it an art form, which I do,
of course,
then I think of it in terms of broader terms. Think of dance. Okay, dance is a category for art. Underneath that category, a lot of styles: jazz, tap, ballet, modern. Clowning is the same way. You have three-ring circus clowning, you have intimate one-ring, stage clowning, theatrical clowning, street clowning, buskering. There's all kinds of ways for this art form to express itself. And I am just amazed at the number of talented people who can afford to live here and still practice their art.
Well, and that's a big part of our focus is how do you do that? How do you afford to be a professional artist in this art form, especially here? And most of them are always either constantly hustling or they do something else. And clown can't be their primary focus, and that's really unfortunate. I mean, there were 100 graduates of my clown conservatory that I went to, and I think less than 10 went on to really big. Maybe that number may be way off, but in my mind, at first thought, I can only think of less than a dozen who went on to Cirque and Big Apple and big things like that. Whereas most of us just do the hustle, just try to keep the work coming.
And it is a hustle, and my hat is off to especially younger artists like Ross Travis, who I just think the world of.
Oh, he's so amazing.
He's amazing, and he, he's working 16 jobs and trying to get grants, and yet still produces this fabulous work.
He was on a couple of weeks ago.
So I know, and I think the world of him, and he to me is an example of how you can do it, but that's the hustle. I mean, it's nonstop.
Well, if you look at someone like a good friend of mine, Kelly Hawley,
sure.
Texas, I mean, she is constantly, finding more work. That's a big part of her job is finding more jobs, is creating more work for herself so she can be an artist for a living and not, have to do what I've done, which has gone the route of having a day job. I couldn't, I blew my shot at Cirque. Blew it hard.
Ooh.
Like fourth or fifth callback, and they're like after the audition, instead of like, well, this is what you did good, and this is what they're like, you had so much time to prepare. And that was
Okay,
it. It
all
was
right,
like, okay, they're never having me. But so I focus mainly on production and, the Clown Cabaret and the festival every year. But most of us have to get day jobs. And you yourself have managed to make a lengthy career working in clown.
That was very charitably put. A lengthy career. I'm old, Abraham, I'm old. Well, so here's how that came about. My first year on the Ringling Show, 1972, there was a senior clown. His name was Swede Johnson. And Swede had been a cat man, big cats he trained. And when he aged out of that, but didn't want to leave the show, they, quote, made him a clown. Now, was he a funny clown? No. Was he a dear, funny man? Yes. And every gem that came out of his mouth we hung on because he was telling the truth. Not only did he say, save your money, but he said, don't be like I am. He said, don't be a has-been. He said, the worst thing in the world for me is to put this makeup on in the morning knowing that I used to wear, and he would point to the pictures of him in his wardrobe, because that's where his true love was. So I thought, okay. And taking that to heart, I figured I better learn how to do, if I want to stay in show business, which I adore, I better learn how to do as many things as I can. Write, produce, direct, line produce, whatever I have to do to stay in the business. And that is the only reason I've been able to maintain a career, is that I've bounced from one thing to the next, willing to change my hat, as long as it was still in show business in some form or another.
So what was the next thing after Ringling? How long did you tour with them, and then where did you go?
So I was there for the 72 season, and was offered a contract for the next year and politely declined. And went to Mexico because one of my teachers at Clown College, Sigfrido Aguilar, who still is teaching, by the way, had a little school there in Pátzcuaro, Mexico. And so 6 of us went there, 2 of us from Ringling. Ron Jenkins, who wrote Acrobats of the Soul and was Dario Fo's interpreter, was also in our 6-person class. And I spent a year, almost a full year in Mexico. Classes in the morning. In the afternoon, we took field trips. But every week, we had to come in with a new piece of material. It didn't matter whether it had a full beginning, middle, and end, but it had to have an inspiration, an idea. And the ones that we decided to work on became a show, which we then toured throughout central Mexico with Sigfrido. It was maybe one of the most creative times I've ever had, because all I had to focus on was the work. And it was 1973, so price of living was not too high in Mexico, and I'd saved a little bit of money on the road, not much. But when that wrapped up, when I came back to the States, because I was young and naive, I picked up the phone and called Irvin Feld, who was the president and CEO of Ringling, and said, I'm back, as if he would care. But he did. And he said, well, that's great, kid. I got an opening as an advanced clown. And I had no idea what he was talking about, but I said, I'll take it. And what it turned out to be was the advanced publicity clown for Ringling, which, so for 5 years, I traveled in a motorhome, crisscrossing the country, getting up at 4:30 in the morning, slapping the grease on, going and doing radio programs, television programs, elementary schools, Kiwanis Club luncheons, which is where I learned how to perform solo and to pull it out of my butt when things went wrong, because they always went wrong. Again, another learning experience that I could never have had without the connection there.
So, advanced clown.
Yep.
Teaching yourself to work solo. How did you... There's a number of years that go by when you go to college, when you get your BFA. Tell me about WMAQ and how that came about and your time there.
So, during my time as an advanced clown, I did a show that we used to do it at deaf schools, but also at college drama classes. So happened that I did one at the then Goodman School of Drama, which was part of the Art Institute in Chicago at the time.
The real Art Institute.
The real Art Institute,
yeah. The Chicago Art Institute is a highly respected establishment for people who don't know, and is not in any way related to all the other art institutes.
I didn't know any of this. I was just a guy on the road. But they sort of courted me, and they were asking would I like to come back and finish my degree work. And I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I would. So they offered me a 1-year credit course to finish my BFA in acting, in return for which I would be teaching first-year acting students circus technique.
Wow.
So I didn't pay any tuition. That was my cost. But again, what a learning experience. And when I graduated, 1976, I went back to Ringling for a little bit, but thought, no, I've got this acting degree. I'm going back to Chicago, which I did, and started making the rounds. And I don't know, harmonic convergence, the planets aligned. I went to this cattle call audition at WMAQ, which is the NBC affiliate in Chicago. they were going to start a new children's program and needed a host. And out of the several hundred people who auditioned, I got that gig, and that gig lasted 7 years, which in television is a very long time.
Yes.
And it helped pay for more clown work in the following years.
So what was the show like? What was doing the show like?
It was cheesy. It was really cheesy. And I always thought of it as amateur hour for the Acme set. It was targeted at kids 9 to 13, and it was basically a forum for them to come on the air, and they could show their hobby, play their instrument, the band. It was Ricky Martin's first interview ever when he came to this country with Menudo. That's how long ago this was. Michael Jackson came on. He lived in Gary, Indiana at the time, and he was promoting a thing called Boogie to Books with the public libraries. Anyway, it was just for shits and grins, but what it afforded me was, again, it was a 3-camera shoot. So I learned all of that technique of how to deal with that. The crew, the stagehands, were phenomenal. These guys had worked with Cook, LaFrance, and Ollie, and they knew the ins and outs of cheap bits on television. Oh my God, I was in heaven. It was like having a master class with Soupy Sales every week. And the money I made from that, and teaching during the week at the Goodman, I invested in my own little production company to produce my one-man clown show.
Right. And sorry to keep harping on the TV show.
Oh, yeah.
Who were you? Were you doing a clown character?
No, I was me. I was a human being. Yeah, just some guy named
A
Smith.
human being as opposed to a clown?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I hold clowns in much higher regard.
Yes. So where did you go from WMIQ? Was it touring with your show, or? So
no. During that time, a lot of things happened show-wise. And I did produce this show called Slapstick and Sawdust in 1978, and again in early 80s. And again, timing is everything. In 1985, we got the pink slip from NBC. We're finally going to cancel the show. And 2 weeks later, I got a call from Ringling offering me the job as Dean of the Clown College. So
amazing. How did you become their top guy?
Manipulation on my part. I had moved the show out of Chicago up to the Woodstock Opera House, a beautiful theater in Woodstock, Illinois. And I knew that Tim Holst was going to be passing through. I said, "You have to come see my show."
Yeah.
You never know. Mm-hmm. But I said, so got him tickets. He came. We had a great evening, reminisced. And almost immediately after is when all this happened. So I had just set this up with him. He had just seen me work. He had written me a note saying, if you were going to run the school, could you give me some ideas of what the curriculum might look like? He said, no, I'm going to be in Chicago again, so I'll stop by. He came to my apartment. I wrote this out on the back of an NBC envelope, big mailing envelope. He left, and then I got the phone call. So
that's amazing. So all that time teaching at the college, those first years, was a huge investment in the work you're going to be doing in the Ringling, I'm assuming, in terms of running the school and developing a curriculum.
My God, Abraham, I love Jeff Raz so much, but he knows what he's doing. I make this crap up as I go, and I was an accidental administrator. I didn't know anything, nothing. All of a sudden, I'm sitting behind this desk that somebody put in front of me, and I got forms and this and that, and hey, what am I going to do? By the seat of my pants, and I realized. I didn't know what I didn't know, but I knew that. So I knew to ask people that I respected. How do you do this? How can I get this done? What's the most expeditious way to do this? What's the gentlest way to let this person down? I just asked questions of people who had come before me or who had taught me, because honestly, I had no idea.
So as the dean of the clown college, what was your job? What did that consist of?
My father asked that question for 10 years. Basically, the year broke into this. Pardon my throat. Recruitment was huge for students and for staff. So I would spend a good deal from January through June of every year on the road, going to visit the 2 traveling units, holding auditions there, but also holding auditions like here in San Francisco. We would rent a room, or we would go to Circus Center and rent a space and have an audition, because the only way to let people know you're around is to go beat the bushes. Mm-hmm. And you don't really know until you're standing in the middle of an exercise or a piece with other people what the real vibe is. You can hear rumors in your windows, and, oh, well, I'd never do that, or I'd never do this, or I'd love to do that. But you have to decide for yourself, and the only way to do that is to put yourself in a position to know. Well, how are you going to know? Well, put me through my routine and let me see what happens. So recruitment was huge. And after the first year, it got much easier because the first year was about designing the curriculum, was about seeing that we had mask class and a character development class. And it wasn't just about slapping on grease paint and flapping your arms so that the lady in the fourth balcony could see you. It was about connecting to your audience in an intimate way, even in an arena setting. And it is possible. It is about making eye contact, and if you can't, you fake it until you make it. Pretend you're looking at your favorite niece or your aunt in that fourth row, and somebody somewhere is going to think you are looking directly at them. And if you make that connection in your own heart and mind, it's there. And people sense if you're being authentic and genuine or you're just play acting. And I think there's a lot of misconception about arena-style clowning because it's huge. It needs to be out of purpose, but it also needs to be true. So designing a curriculum that met those needs was the biggest issue for the first year, and we made some adjustments over the next 9 years, but not too much. It seemed to work.
So on training clowns, on becoming a clown, what is your dogma? What makes a clown? What does a clown have to be? What is at the core of what a clown is?
Well, first of all, you have to be totally available to play. Without making a judgment on that. And you have to allow people in, and you have to let people go. Without bias and without comment. And I mean that in a physical way and also a verbal way. Being genuine is not just about learning the right phrases from your positive living class. It's about having a deep concern for the world that breathes and grows around you, and that means everything in that world. And you, as the clown, have to reflect back to the world what you're seeing. It's sort of like holding up a funhouse mirror to life. And sometimes we don't like the image that we see because sometimes that world is not nice to look at. But I think it's our job to do so. So we are there to poke fun at authority. We are there to embrace disabled, the meek. We are there to remind people that they need to laugh. We are the species that has a sense of humor, that sixth sense that makes us different from everyone else. If you can tap into that, your real sense of humor, and everyone's is different, and it should be, then you're on the right path to being a genuine performing clown. But tapping into your sense of humor, not what somebody taught you, not what you parroted, but what really makes you laugh. And sometimes that's dark, and sometimes that's sarcastic, and sometimes it's very genuinely sweet. But the thing of it is, it has to be authentic. Because a 6-year-old knows if he's being condescended to. He just does. And you cannot escape that.
Well, you've seen my sense of humor. So I go very dark and very vulnerable.
My irises are still burning, Abraham.
So you're at the clown school as the director from 85 through 95?
94. Yeah, 94. The beginning of 95.
So about 10 years.
Yep.
What happens next?
I knew that the end was coming because I had directed the 123rd edition of the greatest show on earth. We called it the Children of the Rainbow Show. Cast of 140, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. And it was a huge undertaking, the biggest challenge I think I've ever had. But Kenneth Feld, then president and producer, and I didn't always see eye to eye. We had artistic differences because this had a story. David Lirible had just come to our country, a clown from Italy. Mm-hmm. And
now, what is his clown character name? I'm trying to remember. It's
David.
It's just different. He has the really big hair.
That's Bello.
That's Bello Knock. Okay. Yeah. So I know David Liribe's name, but I can't visualize him in my mind right now.
He's an Auguste, very sweet, lovable kind of guy. Bad hairpiece, but sweet and lovable. And because he's trained in the European style, he plays 14 instruments. He speaks 5 or 6 languages, and so we tried to tap into that. He was the Pied Piper. We had 30-some children, so we decided to showcase the show around he and the children. And that's what Kenneth and I did not see. Because it had an emotional arc to it, which he was not used to, I think it scared him. I don't know that. I say that because I'm trying to justify myself, but I think it scared him. That we had a moment in the show that when you bit your lip and you almost shed a tear, and then you roared with laughter. I think that was uncharted territory for this man. He was able to do numbers, and indeed he became the billionaire that he wanted to be. But matters of the heart, wow, touchy.
Well, I mean, Ringling, I know Ringling has a special place for you, but Ringling is in many ways responsible for some major changes in what clown has been throughout history up till now, many of which are not necessarily positive. The loss of the voice, the verbal clown going away, and the sacralization of the clown becoming sweeter and sweeter and sweeter until you start having this pushback against clown in general.
Of course. But because they were the big Bertha.
But they're still out there creating every day. And well, not anymore, but they were out there creating every day. And I've had a number of people I care about a lot go on to Ringling. And I've considered Ringling myself. I had an excellent, really, really positive Ringling audition at one point. I think the same year as my good friend Lorena Iacocca, who ended up joining Ringling and was with Blue and Red for a number of years.
Well, it's, certainly it's a huge style. And because they were the big boys on the block, they could steamroll their way through everything: business practices, arena contracting, concessions, and the, quote, art form. And they did, because they gobbled people up. I mean, you have 2 traveling units, have a cast of over 140 in each one of those shows, exotic animals, so many pressure points to send people off to another direction. Here's how I feel about that. I have a very fond place in my heart for Ringling. Always will. They've always treated me well, still do. I no longer work for them, but they gave me the opportunity of a lifetime, more than once. And allowed me to fall flat on my face and did not kick me out the door. Just said, did you learn anything? I know that there are practices from big shows like that just send people, especially clowns, over the edge. But just think about it for a moment. For the young clowns, and even not so young clowns who had worked their way onto that floor, they earned their spot. And the audiences they had in front of them every single day were a gift. Those artists did not have to work to get those people in those seats. They had promoters for that. They had marketing directors. The artist was allowed to do what he was allowed to do. Now, did he open the horizon? Did he expand the scope of the art? In many cases, no.
But he was a working artist. He got to do the job. And he got to do the job that he cared about and that he chose to do.
And there you have it. I don't know that it gets any better than that. And again, when I'm talking about being genuine, I so hear you when you're talking about the sacralization. If I ever hear one more, hi, boys and girls, I just want to throw up. Why would you use that voice? What's wrong with you? I already have a Mickey Mouse voice, and I hate it.
Oh, I love it.
I would try to deepen it. Morgan Freeman could give me lessons. But I think we sometimes get too involved in trying to express our version of the art and thinking that it's the one and only and the most important, when indeed it requires everybody to find the audience that they need. And the world does need us more now than ever. More now than ever. When you have the FBI director calling the president of the United States a liar,
and vice versa,
we're in a shitstorm. We're in the 9th grade and we're having a hissy fight. What is this? We clowns need to band together in the sense that our mission is to not internalize our ill feelings for each other, but to band together to help the world get through this nonsense, because it is major nonsense.
There's been a lot of pressure on me as a go-to producer, not the go-to producer by any means, but a go-to producer in the Bay Area for doing clown stuff. I ran Clown Cabaret at Stageworks for a number of years, and I produced the yearly Circus Festival at Union Square to bring that back so people have a way to verbally express politically what's going on with them. In fact, we're putting on a ACLU Planned Parenthood fundraiser in January for that specific purpose, to try and bring this momentum back. But let's go back to the 90s. Yeah. What happened after Ringling?
Oh God, yes, my train of thought gets derailed very easily. So I knew that the end was coming, and had made some arrangements. So the day that I was leaving Ringling, this was now the 4th time I was leaving Ringling, but I had to turn in my keys and my credit cards and all that stuff. The next morning I was on a plane to Japan and spent 6 months there working and creating a show for a theme park, a Spanish theme park in Japan, Parque España. And it was supposed to open in conjunction with the Barcelona Olympics. They were a couple of years late because the Japanese are very particular. They want everything to be exactly right. So the Gaudi sculptures that they had weren't quite right yet, so we had to wait. But I had an all-Spanish cast and all-Japanese crew and 2 interpreters, and it was a kick. It was just a kick.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was fun.
How long were you there?
So I was there for 6 months the first time and went back for 3 more months to gussie the show up. It was an outdoor spectacular to celebrate the park's 1-year anniversary. And it was at the end of a rail line. Oh my God, this is terrible, I forget. But at the end of this rail line is a national forest, and there's the Emperor's Hotel, where it was supposedly the Emperor stays. It's gorgeous. But in this forest, it was like, wow. And obviously it was by the rail company because they subsidized this whole thing. But what a joy! I did not speak Japanese, and we were in some pretty remote spots. We had to go to Tokyo to record all of the tracks for the vocals. But other than that, we were out in the middle of nowhere, and I loved it. I loved every moment of it. It taught me again that the universal language of physical movement trumps everything. Oh, I shouldn't say that. It exceeds words.
We can't let them take words away from
us. I know. It is just so important that we're aware of our body language because it means something different everywhere. And
very much so.
Be careful. Yeah.
So how does this transition into the time that you did working off-Broadway and working for Walt Disney World?
Okay, so this is the real dive into being an independent contractor. I had no idea what to do, but I just started sending out letters to contacts, and I got real names of real people from other people I knew in the business. So I wasn't writing a generic letter to a place, I was writing to a person on a recommendation. I found always that that's the best way to make an introduction if you want to get a response. So one of those was my friend Chuck Jones, who I met. and if you don't know who Chuck Jones was, he created Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, Pepe Le Pew, Marvin Martian, directed over 300 Warner Brothers cartoons, 4 Academy Awards. He was the sweetest, nicest man and my hero. And I met him on a radio program in Chicago. I was in full makeup doing a promo for Ringling, and he was in the next room talking about, I don't even remember what. I just remember standing there with my jaw open, and he waved me in. And I said, Mr. Jones, I'm Mr. Smith, and I love you. And he said, I love you more. And that was the beginning, really, of a beautiful friendship. And I called Chuck, and he said, oh, well, yeah, come on out to California. We're starting up the studio again. And Warner Brothers had, in their benevolence, on his 85th birthday, given him another lifetime contract. But they also gave him Building 131, which was not Termite Terrace, but it is where he was the last time he was at Warner. And my job was to recruit a young team of animators because he was going to begin to make another series. And he made 12 with the help of a lot of people. They were not the best in the world. This was late in his career. But you got every day to drive onto the Warner lot, and there's my hero sitting in the room, and we're joking together, and I would act out the storyboards for the animators, and I would try to teach them how to act out. Kismet. Okay, I don't know how to explain it. But through Chuck, then I met other producers and started sending letters to them, which is how I found out about theme parks, at least how to get into where I wanted to be, which was in the process of creating a show.
Yeah.
That's what fascinates me. How do you take these ideas and bring it to life in something, in a respectable way that you're proud of? And I like to think I have high expectations. And I learned that by working with these great people. So one of the people I met was from Disney. And the choreographer that I worked with at Ringling had worked there, and he always called it Mauschwitz. And I said, well, I don't know if I want to work there. And he said, no. He said, I say that with love. Here's who you need to talk to. So I did. And because of the gig I had in Japan at a theme park, they brought me in. They were doing 100 Years of Magic. It was to celebrate Walt Disney's 100th birthday. And as an independent contractor, I was hired for 2 weeks, which turned into 12 months. I did live in Sarasota, but I commuted to Orlando every day. And some weekends they would put me up there.
Wait. You lived in Sarasota and commuted to Orlando?
To Orlando every day.
Okay.
It was a 2-hour drive.
Yeah.
If you keep the pedal down. I had a Miata. What can I say? Zoom, zoom. And I was also flying back and forth to California to still be with Chuck, although we were wrapping things up at that point. So I got in with one of the show directors at Disney, and so started doing pitches with him, and because they wanted a new parade in all of the parks, all 4 parks. So we were walking by, which you cannot help but walk by a gift store when you're in Disney, and I'm looking in the window, I'm going, oh my God, that's the parade. And what I was looking at was a show full of snow globes. I said, that's our parade. And they built gigantic floats that were snow globes, and the fans in the bottom and the confetti blowing, and the one that had Cinderella, she did the transformation. Oh my God, what fun. But these kids had the deep pockets, and you could say, what if we did this? And they go, oh yeah. And they started drawing all this. Wait a minute, I was just saying, this is probably breaking a rule, but we were going to do the Sorcerer's Apprentice hat for one of the parks. And they said, well, I just can't do the hat. So the final design was the hat, but the ears were Ferris wheels. And you rode the Ferris wheels, and when you got off at the top, then the inside of the hat was a circular staircase that came down. It was motorized like an escalator. Yeah. And it's told the history of Walt Disney until you got to the bottom, which of course was a gift shop. But it was such a cool idea. They didn't do it, but it was a great idea. And I had such fun, and again, learned from, just pros, just real professional people who have their crap together, and,
So, Off-Broadway.
Off-Broadway. Another fluke. B.T. McNichol, who I met because of Clown College. He had dated one of the students there. And I had become friendly, and he lived in New York. He was a writer-director, and he was doing a show called The It Girl. And he had several silent movie scenes, and he wanted me to help with them. And I wound up directing them. And he brought in Jerry Zaks because they were friends. And if you don't know who Jerry Zaks is, he old-time Broadway director. Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum with Nathan Lane. Many shows. Cheap Bits for Days. His mentor was Zero Mostel.
Wow.
So he was telling me those stories and those gags and those jokes. And it's all the same, Abraham. I mean, nothing new under the sun. Everything we do now has been done before. We just make it a little more topical, I think. And so we did it at the York Theater in New York City. It was supposed to have a short run. It lasted for a while, which was kind of fun. But it also gave me an eye into that world. And, I do love show business. I absolutely do. But it is one of the most gossipy businesses I have ever been in my life. Oh, my God. And you look at the giants, and they're in the green room, dissing, another director down the street, and you go, that's not very nice. What do you think he's saying about you? But I do love it. And it's in New York, it was cutthroat. I mean, very much so. Not that it isn't everywhere, but really, really. Everyone who makes it hangs on for dear life. And then they make another peg, and then they hold on even tighter. I could not work like that.
I get the feeling Cirque is kind of that way as well. Once you get in there, you get that role. You are not letting go of that role until you die or cannot do it.
Exactly. I met a woman in New York who had been with Les Mis for 10 years in the same role. I thought, oh my God, just opened a vein. And she said, well, I put my 2 kids through college. So, who am I to say anything?
Yeah.
Yep, I can't top that.
And again, working artist. Getting to do the job.
She said, what difference does it make? She said, I get to go every night into a fantasy world. They pay me to do it, and they pay me well. And the check's clear.
So how long did you work off-Broadway?
So we were there, 6-8 months total. Yeah.
Okay. So from there, at some point, you make it over to Big Apple. What happens in between?
Well, so during my time at Ringling, not only as advanced clown, but dean of Clown College, I went to see every show, every circus. It was professional courtesy. And Paul Binder and I had, who was the founder and artistic director of Big Apple, had not a contentious relationship. I just thought he was a putz, and and didn't mind telling him so. Here's an example. So in my quest of being an independent contractor, I am in New York City doing off-Broadway. Big Apple's out in Queens. So I go out, say hi, they give me a ticket, see the show. And Paul's his usual blustery self. And I said, I'd like to put my hat in the ring to direct a show here. I love the aesthetic. I love the intimacy, and I would love to give it a shot. He laughed it off and ha-ha'd, but Guillaume Dufresnoy, who succeeded him as artistic director, said, Stevie, you should go ahead and you submit this. So I did. The next time I saw Paul was at Big Apple Circus. Ringling had opened Kaleidoscape, which was their answer to Cirque du Soleil. This beautiful show. How they got permits to be in Bryant Park, I will never know. Money. But it was gorgeous. And so I went to see that, and then I went over across town to see Big Apple, and Paul Binder in the house, he's in the big top, in his ringmaster garb. Audience is coming in. He sees me, and he goes, well, I can't tell you what he said to me, but this string of expletives comes pouring out of his mouth about how could Kenneth Feld do this to him? New York was his city. And I'm going, children, you ringmaster, ooh, no, but we both, he stopped. We made that moment of eye contact where you just knew how ridiculous it was, and started laughing so hard we both cried. And that was the beginning of that beautiful relationship.
That's
Took
gorgeous.
me back after the show. We talked about what was coming up. We said, make a pitch. Just so happened that Barry Lubin, a dear friend, wanted to do a show called Grandma Goes to Hollywood. I jumped right on that bandwagon, and that's how that happened.
That's gorgeous. And how long were you with Big Apple?
5 years in 4 productions that I got to co-create and direct. And it was still when they had a core company, and that core company of artists were developing acts during the season while they were out on the road. They had a 9-month season, which is great in circus. Beautiful show. I loved every moment of it. I really did. And I'm happy they're back, and I hope they do well. I really do.
So that brings us almost up to date.
Okay.
What happened after Big Apple before now?
More small task. I worked for Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines over a 9-year period, staging the big parades that happen in the Royal Promenade. So a cast again of 100.
Is that on the boat?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And they corrected me because I said the boat, and the captains look at you.
Yes,
a ship.
It's a ship. My apologies.
I was afraid they'd take my cabin away from me. But again, it was, as a line producer and as a director, I did that. Acted locally in Sarasota and St. Petersburg area just to keep the chops. I wanted to see if I could still memorize lines because I was having some short-term memory issues. So I chose Twelfth Night and played Festy, clown. And I could remember them, not well, but I could. At least they came out in iambic pentameter. I can say that. And I came to California not to work. I came to California for 2 reasons. Both of my brothers live on the West Coast. My older brother lives here in California, out in Chico, and he's older than I am. And I came out here for health care because Florida, again, idiot governors, I could not get the health care I needed in Florida. I couldn't afford it. And my older brother said, I think you qualify for some programs out here, so come on out. So I went to Chico, California, to stay with him for a while. And one thing led to the next. I had to be in San Francisco in order to get the treatments I needed. And during that time, 2 things happened. I was living in a group home. How do you afford rent out here? Oh, my God. So I'm living in this house with 12 people, which might have been fine when I was 20.
Yeah.
But, and I'm looking through Craigslist for apartments. I thought, well, I'll just check out the job scene. Part-time job. And this little job pops out at me because I recognize the address. They don't put their name on it, but they're looking for a front desk reception person at 755 Frederick Street. I said, I know that address. I know exactly where that is. So I just submitted my application to be the front desk reception guy. and I got a call from Barry Kendall saying, I understand that maybe you do more than answer phones. Would you like to come in and have a chat? I said, sure. Again, in talking with Barry, who I have great regard for, I came to understand that no matter how much you try to run away from yourself, you can't. And even though I did not want to be the me that I was the only me I had. And so when they offered me a job as creative director, first of all, I said, that's a phony baloney title if I ever heard one, but you have to call me something, so call me that.
And Circus Center has a long history of creative directors.
Yes, I'm I'm proud to stand in that line of luminaries. I am the luckiest pup in the world. I never at this point in my career did I think I would be, well, you produce cabaret. You know what that's like. And I knew the history of Pickle and Circus Center. But I try to keep an open mind, and having known Peggy and know Jeff Raz and Bill Irwin, I thought, you know what, let's just see how this goes. Because I sensed a lot of ill feeling in the community, the performance community here. Left over, I thought, residual stuff from years ago.
There's not necessarily years ago, but there have been so many Circus Centers. The Circus Center has been so many groups of management and so many financial failures and so many people getting locked out of the building and so many. I'm not even going to go into everything, but there is, and there's not been a lot of let's rebuild that community.
Yeah.
There's to my knowledge, there's never been a let's reach out to the alumni and try and pull them back in. It's always just let's keep the doors open. And so because that has to be the focus, they can't really do the work needed to build the community back up to what it was back in the day when you know the Clown Conservatory and to a degree the Circus Center were in their heyday.
Absolutely. And when Jeff was running things, it was a golden era here. It really was.
I consider myself supremely privileged to have gotten to go to the Clown Conservatory when Jeff was running it, and Peggy Ford was still around, and there are all these wonderful people that I got to learn from, both within that faculty and external faculty they brought in. John Gilkey is one of the greatest directors I've ever worked with, and has. What little time I spent with him has had so much influence on the clown that I became. But I mean, Jeff has had so much influence on the clown that I became. That period of my life was a huge inversion of everything that I had done. A complete turnaround from where I'd been going, and anyway, don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about you.
Well, no,
but
what's important is that we do share these stories. Because we share this commonality of a love of a craft and art form that we all have high expectations for and are continually disappointed by, but must strive to make it better for the next generation of funsters who are going to come and poke the eye of authority.
Let's talk about a little more esoteric stuff.
Yeah.
Media in general. What are your influences? Books, movies, television? You talked about Laurel Hardy. You talked about Chaplin.
Yep.
Who or what are the media that influenced the clown that you became?
Well, I would have to say film, without a doubt. Some television. Film was pretty, the silent clowns were the ones who appealed to me first, and they still hold a spot in my heart that it will always be there. Television, I grew up in the 50s, so Red Skelton, Johnny Carson. I used to sneak my brother and older brother had a black and white TV, 9-inch black and white TV, which I would sneak into my room because I wasn't allowed to be up. But I didn't know exactly why I liked him, but it was his timing. He did the joke, he did the setup, he waited, he got the laugh, and I thought, and I just loved his style. He had a real style. And
it may have been a little early for you, or if he was on the air, even at that. He was on the air for I believe 20 years straight. But Ernie Kovacs.
Oh my God!
From that period is just a huge.
The Nairobi
huge
Trio.
influence.
Are you kidding me? Pouring the water. The television tricks.
Which he created. He innovated so much within his field.
Stunning. Watching Groucho on You Bet Your Life, and then going back and looking at all the films and watching how these artists made a living in the craft long after their chosen field maybe had shut down or that part of their career was over. Those were lessons for me. They're always lessons. Okay, Groucho's doing this now. And he got a lot of crap for being on TV and hosting a game show. He was hysterical.
Yeah.
So those were huge influences.
I love my cigar, but I take it out.
Yes, one of the best jokes ever.
So what in all media, including clown and theater, what's a piece that you feel is underrated that more clowns should be looking at, should be considering?
Well, if you don't know some of the second bananas in silent films, you need to go back and look at Lapino Lane. I don't know if you've ever seen a film of Lapino Lane's, but look them up. This little spark plug of a comic, to me, he's mesmerizing. And again, his timing, his style, oh my God. Buster Keaton had a beautiful style. He could do a toothpick fall like nobody I've ever seen. And do it on a broken neck, for that matter. Lapino Lane is just one of the unsung heroes of movie comedians that you need to know if you don't, and even if you do go back and look at him again. But there's nothing that compares to live performance. You can't capture it on video, at least not yet, that gives you that visceral feeling that you're right there and that anything can happen because the artist has set that up. And it's so beautiful when it happens. And that's when I hang. I just hang, wait. And of course, I would always use Bill Irwin as an example of that, because the first time I saw him, I wept, but not because I was sad, but I had just witnessed something.
He's just so beautiful,
elegant, class,
his
style.
Grace, his fluidity.
And that's the word. That is the word. Grace.
He's just such an amazing individual. I wish he was still doing clown. He was excellent in Legion, his most recent television project, but I wish there was more clown that he had to give us as often as he gives us, his character acting roles in television and film.
Well, like everyone, he's trying to make his monthly nut.
So and he seems to be doing it.
He does.
He
but
stays
Old
out
Hats,
there.
It's not been too long ago. Old Hats.
No, that's within the last 10 years.
That's the first time I'd ever seen him do drag, and he did that in a style that I had. He was wonderful. So I cannot say enough about live performance art. If you know of someone somewhere doing a gig, go watch them. That's how you'll learn their style, whether you like them or not. If it sparks something in you, strike up a conversation. Meet this person. Meet this fellow artist. Find out what you have in common or what you don't, who they studied with, who you have in common. That's how we grow our community. And I hope we can get back to the time when we can reach out our collective arms to each other and do more things together.
That's lovely. Almost 45 years since you joined the clown school.
I went in 71, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess 46 years.
Huh? Oh, yeah.
What is, not necessarily the weirdest, but a weirdest gig that you've ever had to do? Or gotten to do?
I did, well, it was weird for me. In Chicago, while all the other things were going on, again, we were hustling to make a living. There was a benefit being held at a comedy club called Zanies, which was an old strip club on Lincoln. And I had never worked that kind of venue before. So I decided to do my old crotchety magician, Moldo the Great. Not realizing that the stage, which is about the size of a postage stamp, is next to the front door.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so it was a little disconcerting because it was a very late show, for me anyway, past my bedtime, 1 a.m. And I had not been used to hecklers, and I had not been used to somebody being really drunk and shouting back, because it was a silent character. And I didn't have enough cheap bits to cover my ass. Sorry. So I ended the routine early. Let me say it that way, and got out of there. I was not suited for that venue.
Yeah, in my limited performance career, I've mainly worked in theatrical clown, so there isn't a lot of negative feedback. People are game. People are there to take part. But when I've worked on the street, or not necessarily on the street, but in public, outdoors, heckling has been. I've been in a trunk doing a trunk act and had someone come up and sit on the trunk so I couldn't get out. I got heckled. Tremendously heckled at an event that we produced for the SF Giants, where we were just bringing out circus people to be on a stage for some random reason. It was this SF Giants state fair. They decided they were going to throw a state fair and pay almost nothing to I used to be the director of special projects at Circus Center, so I built up this whole show for that thing, and including a bunch of clown acts, but never those two things are the worst heckling I've ever been. That's one of the reasons I probably couldn't handle stand-up myself. Have you ever done stand-up?
No. That's an arena I have. Oh my God, I have such respect for anyone who can do that, because talk about being naked on stage. That would be it.
So we're getting close to the end, but in terms of your projects, in terms of things that you've created and that come entirely from you, that aren't contract labor. What is, or even within the realms of work you've done for others, what is a project that or role that you've always wanted to do, but budgets or logistics prevented it from happening?
Oh my goodness. Well, I happen to be a big fan of big productions and over-the-top production values. When I first got out here to San Francisco and was learning the area and went to Fort Mason and looked at some of the venues there, I concocted this idea for a show. Knowing Kenneth Feld and knowing the resources he had, I came up with this idea for a show and went to see Joanna Haygood over at Zach Allen.
Oh, she's so wonderful. She is by far my favorite choreographer in San Francisco.
Lord.
And whenever I need choreography, I'm like, please, Joanna, come work on this.
She's the best. And I knew that she had done some big things. And so anyway, I hired an artist to do some renderings, and it involved a lot of movable platforms and BMX bikers who came out of the ceiling. No, it did. And inflatable costumes that were enormous, and because it was the water, do you know those jetpacks that you can come up out of the water? That have the big hose?
Yeah.
So I had a whole piece choreographed to that, and it was just this huge extravaganza that would begin at the Armory downtown. It was a progressive show, so you had to take the buses, and it would never happen.
That was before the Armory was what it is now.
Well, I guess. I mean, I just saw the building and said, oh my God. Then I saw the gym and went, oh my God, 90-foot ceilings with these vaulting.
But they do shows in there still, but their clientele may have changed some.
Yeah, that's what I understood. But I thought, what the heck, maybe during the day we could do ours. But I like to dream on that kind of scale because I got to play in that arena for a while.
Would this have been a Feldback show? Was that the idea?
That was the idea. It would certainly it would require multi-million dollars to produce it. But having worked for him with a multi-million-dollar budget, I knew what that was about. And it sounds like a lot of money, but when you have a cast that large and effects that you're trying to...
I mean, I am hugely pro-union, but when you're dealing with theatrical unions, the costs just automatically go through the roof when you're pulling in riggers, just riggers. When you're pulling in riggers into a theater like the Magic Theater out at Fort Mason, the majority of your costs are for the union crew and not for the theater itself.
Well, and it's true. And being a proud union member, I always respect the members. But I saw a show at Z Space, and I fell in love with that space. I thought, oh my God, this is what a beautiful little venue this is. And so I've been cooking up ideas I would love to put in that kind of space. I guess I look at anything as a venue, indoors, outdoors, on this planet, on others.
Have you checked out Stageworks in the time that you've been here?
I have not.
Stageworks is an excellent black box theater. It seats about 75, I think, maybe 100.
Nice.
But it's just a beautiful black box theater, and the owner, Ty McKenzie, is the most supportive towards clown and circus arts of any other theater owner that I've interacted with. And there's some others that are good too, like Joe Landini of SS Safe House, but Ty McKenzie is the most supportive person, and without her we couldn't have done the many years of the cabaret that we did.
Wow, well, that's good to know, and I'll drop your name when I call him.
She is excellent. All right, we're about to wrap up, but one more question.
Sure.
Two actually. Where online can people find you and your work?
I doubt anywhere.
Okay.
I used to have a website. I did, but it was too hard to maintain and it cost too much money. And so really, I guess you could find stuff on YouTube if you just put Steve Smith clown or director.
Well, and you've got a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, I do.
I guess secondly is if you could tag 3 other people to be on this podcast after you, 3 other clowns, who would they be?
Here in the town?
Doesn't matter.
Well, Amelia Von Brandt, you need to have her.
We were trying to work that out.
Okay. She like Ross are extremely busy, but I think she's stunning in her scope and her range of her work. I already mentioned Ross. Then there's a duo. So there's a duo, Steve and Ryan. Now these are old school clowns, but they're very young guys. But they not only build these beautiful props and they tour with mud shows, and they are exquisite physical comedians. So you look them up online, Steve and Ryan, and you'll see their work. They're very much out of the Ringling mold, but don't let that turn you off if that does. Just the name of it. Watch them work. They're really spectacular. Okay. And Mr. Greg DeSanto, who is the executive director at the Clown Hall of Fame in Baraboo, Wisconsin, another exquisite example of what a physical comedian can do. And he's been doing it for years.
That's wonderful. Anything else that you would like to add to our listeners? Anything that you want clowns to know or think about before we sign off?
I just thank you. I think this is such a great idea. I appreciate the time to be with you. And we need to schmooze more. We need to talk, have a nosh. Calm down. We have coffee. We talk funny.
All right. Again, Steve Smith, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Abraham.